doing some. All right, this is the January 19th, 2022 meeting of the Downtown Partnership Committee on Finance and Growth. I'm calling this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public, Cynthia?
No, we don't. We do not.
All right. Next comes approval of the minutes from December 15th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Shameen, seconded by Mario. Any changes, comments, corrections? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right. Uniform, unanimous. All right. Next is review and recommendation to the Board of Directors of the final draft 22-23 budget attached. Cynthia, you want to make the presentation?
Sure. So basically what I did was I made the two changes that the committee had recommended at our last meeting. And I don't know if you want me to bring it up on the screen. I can do that.
I don't, does anybody need to see it right now? It's in your packet. Just let it go.
Okay. All right, so on the second page, we had changed it so that we are, as of July 1st, we will no longer be paying for employee parking for the 2 parking spaces. So that was a easy conversation with Laz. So that saved us a little bit of money under travel and conferences because that's where that money was parked. And then under program expenses, starting on page 3, at the committee's recommendation, we changed the proposed increase to 2.5% up from 2%, which was in my draft. So those were the 2 changes. You know, still leaves us with you know, $9,300 to the good in terms of this operating budget. And that was about it. So this is what I submitted in the town system. Well, it wasn't in the town, anyway, to the town. So the finance department has this. And then it'll just be final recommendation from the committee to the board.
All right, so what's in order is a recommendation that this budget draft proposal be referred to the Board of Partnership Board at its next meeting. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Aylesworth. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Kajura. Questions, comments?
No, I think we previously kind of talked through all this and it makes sense to me.
Okay. Since there's no further discussion, is there anybody who wishes to oppose the motion or to abstain? All right, it's passed unanimously. Now, update on the strategic plan, next steps, and downtown stores. And Cynthia, in your conversations with owners where you've been talking with them about a greater contribution, will those contributions require amendments to our budget, do you think, at some point?
It depends what the contributions will go towards. So the interest that we've heard thus far from the Hart folks is there was interest in putting money toward our events. So that's out of the 270 fund in the town system. So there may be some other changes along the way. It's just to be determined.
Okay.
So I can, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tony.
No, that's, go ahead.
So Paul and Shamim, I think, are the only 2 that have not seen the strategic plan until I sent it in the packet. So our board approved it at its January meeting. So I just wanted to call your attention to a couple of things substantively and then update you on what the proposed process is. So in the plan, probably the biggest piece, which will not be unfamiliar to this group, is the recommendation from the Street Sense group to develop a financial plan to determine new levels of donations required to sustain and grow partnerships efforts. So you'll recall we kind of started that about 2 years ago. And so I think we knew this was going to come back to this committee. So the process that the board approved this month was to set up a working group that would be a flexible working group that would be the group that would lead the effort to implement the strategic plan. That doesn't mean that certain committees like governance and finance wouldn't have a role. And I can see that this piece would easily fall under the Finance and Growth Committee. But the working group hasn't been formed yet, so to be determined. So the plan right now, after sending a suggestion to Sean and Kyle and getting their feedback, is that the board would discuss the working group at its meeting on February 3rd, would discuss initial composition, who's leading the group, what the duties are. And I think I had sent you all, well, actually in the strategic plan, there's a page about implementation. You know, what's the budget for implementation? What's the meeting schedule? What's the time frame to complete the tier 1 strategies? And what's the reporting mechanism? One thought, based on some feedback from Frank Gifford, the chair of governance, is that the governance committee would be a good group for the working group to report back to. There was also some interest, I think, from Sean Basington, one of our board members, is that the executive committee should be included too. So one thought is that it would be a joint meeting or meetings between governance and the executive committee to be sort of the report back entity. And we've certainly done joint meetings with committees in the past. So that's the plan for the February board meeting. We'll also discuss a little bit more about next steps with the property owners. One of the key goals is to have the 2 main commercial property owners meet together with a partnership, and probably Larissa Ortiz from Street Sense to kind of guide that discussion in terms of collaboration on tenanting. And then try to nail down a specific endorsement from the Hart and Oak Tree teams, try to nail down financial commitment. So there's a couple of follow-up items from our conversations with them that Kyle and Larissa and I had back in just early January, December. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's anything specific in the plan that you all had questions on.
You know, I continue to think that the only way we're going to get more money out of the owners is to put them on the board. And I'm wondering, in your conversations with them, has there been any interest in this?
They haven't, how do I want to say this? So in terms of their response into what we presented them, that was one they didn't spend a lot of time commenting on. I think they were more focused on, you know, what kind of financial commitment are we looking for from them? You know, I know there's a question about whether what that level of commitment is, and does that correlate with being on the board? I think Kyle has some thoughts about that.
What are Kyle's thoughts?
Well, I think he feels that whatever commitment needs to be substantial enough to garner a position on the board. So there's somebody in the waiting room that I do not recognize.
Is that Shamim? She may have jumped off.
Yeah, I see Allison Deckman. So I don't know if, I guess I have to let them in. I don't know that they would have this password, but. So I can do that. I guess I need to, right, Tony? Or how does that work?
Can you contact this person offline?
I think when they're in the waiting room, you can have communication with them. I think you can
I
send them
guess
a
it's
message.
Shamim, because
Oh,
it
it is?
says,
Okay, well, let Shamim in.
all right.
Yep. You don't look like
Change your
Allison
name.
Beckman.
It's an AKA.
She's taking on a whole new
I
identity.
know, I get this, I have many hats and I'm not really Allison Deckman, but.
Could we ask who Allison Deckman is?
Yeah, I am the regional person for our special ed director group in the Northeast, whatever we call this, the Northeast section. And Allison Deckman is with Concase and she set up the Zoom link and it just, every time I have to change it. So wherever the last Zoom meeting is that I've been on, or for whatever reason, it seems to pick up that one.
And she turned back into Shamim.
Yes, I did. Fortunately.
We almost didn't let you in.
I do have a friend who likes to use the name like John Smith when he's at Starbucks instead of deal with spelling and pronunciation. So anywho,
Tony, do I remember correctly that when Callahan was on the board, he wanted to have the owners have seats on the partnership board? Or am I misremembering? I think this was actually before I was mayor. This was in the middle 2000 teens. And
I don't remember that, but
they didn't want to be on the board. Do I have that right, Cynthia?
Yes, Paul, yes. I didn't remember that it came from former board member Tom Callahan, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we had specifically asked the EDR/Graystar team. And at the time, the feeling was that it might be a conflict of interest because we were still going through some of the approval process. So this was during, if I recall correctly, this was during our first strategic plan. So this was the group from Ohio that came out before Francine Christensen, if I'm remembering this correctly. So yeah, I mean, it's very, as Larissa said, it's typical that property owners would be on a board of directors of a downtown organization.
I think that has to be a real goal to make them partners. I think it's the only solution to our financial issues. I don't think we can raise money from individuals. We've tried that in the past. It's a lot of work, and the businesses themselves feel too strapped to make any kind of significant contribution. We can do a couple $100 here and maybe even $1,000 or $2 there, but that's not going to fund the organization. It's not going to hire staff.
I would just echo what Tony's saying. I had comments to that effect when I did my my board evaluation in the last couple of weeks. I definitely think that upping our level of engagement with property owners is essential, and it seems to me that giving them representation on the board is kind of a tit for tat if you're going to make that happen.
And it's not, I mean, the conflict of interest may come around taxation, but it's certainly not going to come around approval of construction documents or any of those things which were there originally.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah, times have changed for sure.
It is
Well, I think
worth a
this-
try. It's worth a try. I agree with Ryan.
Yeah, I do think, I think both of them, I think, as I mentioned at the board meeting, are definitely committed to doing something financially. What that is to be determined. So I know we'll have a large conversation about this at the board meeting on the 3rd too.
Well, my feeling about this is this is a partnership. Should be partners.
Yeah.
I mean, we did have members from the business community in town. And that has gotten weaker. So why not really say we want a true partnership? The university and the town are in it, but you need to be in it too in order to make this work.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, we've talked about that in governance a lot. We're very lucky to have Mario on our board as a business, People's United Bank in the downtown. But losing Jesse and Taj was, had a major impact because they were also like Mario, they were advocates for the downtown and vocal advocates and involved and, as Mario is, we're missing that. We're missing additional people in that role, but it's been tough. We've been trying. So, we'll keep trying. We're talking about it at the governance committee meeting on Monday too. I mean, we have 4 potential open seats, elected seats. So, maybe between the property owners and a couple more businesses, I think that would be the ideal myself.
Now, when we did the surveys of businesses, there were several businesses who were doing very well. CVS, Dunkin' Donuts. I wonder if those local, although they're big chains, I wonder whether their local managers would be interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a conversation, Tony. That's hard to get them though. It's really hard. It's really hard to get yeah, I mean, there is one group on our list that I'm not sure if I think Steve did approach them and I'm not sure if he heard back, but yeah, it's, I mean, the Dunkin' Donuts are local folks. So, that's a potential avenue as well. But there's a couple of people we've asked that, and it's for the EDC too, to be honest. It's people are busy, especially with their businesses. They're just, some of them are, it's tough, still a tough time. Although from what I've heard, actually a lot of people did very well the last couple of months. So that's very positive, at least in the downtown.
So what beside, I sort of sidetracked this discussion away from the strategic plan requirements for this committee. Where do you see us going?
So I think, the main thing is this financial plan, and I think it's tied into your comments, right, Tony, in terms of
Yeah.
property owners, but I mean, we really have to do I feel still, granted we only got one response, but maybe we can get some help from Street Sense in terms of some folks that do this that I didn't reach out to. I mean, there's a financial cost to that too, but that's something I think the working group needs to start, looking at all these strategies that are in tier 1 and, who's going to be responsible for this? Is it the working group that's going to be flexible, people coming in and out? Is it the finance committee, the governance committee, the executive committee, the board? So I have to divvy out the responsibilities and who's taking the lead. But that's a big one for this committee, I would think.
We talked earlier about looking for a consultant to help us with finding alternative sources. Do you think that we should reopen that discussion?
Yes. I do.
Before or after we talk to the owners?
I would say let's get the owner's piece solidified first before we do that.
Good, that makes sense to me too. So what's the process for dealing with the owners? Where do we stand on that and where do we go from here?
So at the board meeting on the 3rd, Kyle's going to go over where we are, which the board pretty much had an update in February, but since Kyle and Sean and Larissa and I had a follow-up meeting, there's a couple of things that came out of that. So I think the feeling is we want some definitive answers, because the first meetings with the property owners were, here's the plan, what are your initial thoughts? We'll get back to you. Let us know if you have any questions. So I did a little bit of follow-up with them. So we're at a point now where we need to see if we can get some clear answers from them. So Kyle will preview that with the board and get your feedback, the board members. on the 3rd.
Okay, now there is a condo association that includes the various owners of the first floor retail and the apartment owners. What is it? Gray what? Gray Wall?
Gray Star?
Gray Star. Okay, so as the association, could we get them to come onto the board and make a substantial contribution?
I mean, that's one way to handle it. So there's 2 separate condo associations. So Gray Star has one with Oak Tree and they have one with Hart on behalf of the Connecticut State Pension Fund. So right now, the Oaks is contributing $8,000 a year. Whether that comes from the condo association or out of Gray Star, I assume it comes directly just from Gray Star, but I'm not sure. I don't ask too many questions. I just take the money. So, you know, Katie Delaney is committed to 8,000 for next year. She's still waiting for her budget to be approved. You know, knock on wood, we've never been denied that. Originally, we had asked them for 10. I think ultimately the goal would be to at least get that much from each owner, but we're not quite there yet. I don't mean that.
Clarify something for me. The
Yep.
there's a condo association that's made up of 2 other condo associations.
No, there's 2 condo associations.
Okay, and they are made up, one condo association is,
Gray Star and Oak Tree Capital, so the commercial property on Wilbur Cross and on to Royce Circle.
and the
And then
second one
The
is,
second one is Hart Realty on behalf of the Connecticut State Pension Fund, so Dog Lane, Royce Circle, yeah.
and the Gray Star Apartments that are above it.
Yes, Gray Star is part of both of them. They control both of them in terms of votes, et cetera, et cetera. But the funding that we have received in the past for events from, remember the Wilder Companies was their marketing agent? Well, their money was coming from Hart. That's sort of a separate, they did that under their own budgets. They're separate budgets for Hart. And Oak Tree Capital went ACF, and they funded they were the financier, that's not the right word, sorry, Mario, for ACF's acquiring the property, and now they have it back. And so that money that we got for events came directly from Oak Tree now. Like for Winter Welcome, they gave us, I think, $1,500.
All right, that's pocket change for these companies. We really need to do something to exercise some leverage here. I assume that we leave these negotiations to you and Kyle as the partnership's representatives.
Yeah, Kyle's very strong. So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely, we should have that discussion on the 3rd, you know, who wants to be involved from the partnership. You know, Sean's been very involved as well. So I don't think it's precluding anybody else for, you know, wanting to get involved.
Well, maybe we need to put a town person in those meetings as well, because that looks like UConn and you so
Yeah,
far.
the town, I mean, I understand the thought, the one obvious wrinkle with town officials getting too involved is the taxation piece.
Yeah.
You know, we're strong arming you and, you know, geez, we'd hate to see your assessment go up if something were to happen. So, you know, clearly, you know, we don't want even the appearance of any sort of intimidating tactics or anything. Now, Cynthia, though, at a previous meeting, Kyle said, and maybe you just said this now, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted with a couple emails that came in, but there was some, for lack of a better term, like market analysis behind the ask, right? Like those numbers had some
Yes.
basis. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember if Kyle mentioned this at the last board meeting. But yeah, so we looked at, I got from the assessor's office the value of the property, and Larissa did an analysis that looked at, you know, the, what the potential rate would be. And I think she did it based on 3%, which was similar to like Northampton. I can't remember if it's Bridgeport. I don't have it right in front of me. So those numbers were shared. And one of them didn't say really too much, and the other said, I don't know, because it's a pretty hefty lift. So, but he put it out there, and so
As a contribution to the partnership,
yes,
3% of their assessed value?
I think it was either 3% or 0.3. I'm sorry, Tony, I don't have it right in front of me. I'd have to pull it up.
3% sounds very high.
Yeah, I don't
Probably
think it was
0.3%.
0.3. I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, so where do we, Paul, Shamim, Mario, I've been really dominating this conversation. Where are you guys on this?
I mean, it's tough to say. You know, similar to what Ryan mentioned, as far as you know, getting those board members from the community, whether it's the owners, whether it's small businesses, possibly, so as to have a more vested stake in the community. I know to Cynthia's point, you know, timing, especially those single members, is really crucial. Not all the time will they have the opportunity to spend an hour and a half, whatever the case may be. But just to at least value their input and to see what it is that the partnership is trying to do, I think is important.
Paul?
Tony, I've already said that I agree with Ryan, which is that bringing them into the tent is really not only the right thing to do, but the only way forward. In terms of the logistics of offering up a vacant board, see that to me is, obviously, since I don't live in town any longer, and I'm quite a few degrees removed. That's a detail. I could even say that if this works, then I could see amending the bylaws to possibly reserving board seats. It's something to think about, but I don't think that should deter us from just making the ask to have them join us.
To follow up with that, it makes perfect sense that they should want to be on the board. I don't think we can force people to be on the board though, so that's the tricky part, right? So I know that communication is always a little fraught with the owners as it is, so I'm not sure how they will come to the table.
They blew us off last time, and but that was some time ago, and so I think that it's time to approach it differently, or at least try.
Mm-hmm. It's worth a try, definitely.
Yeah, Paul's, you know, we are dealing, I mean, we have, you know, one of the folks that they were working for Hart, but they weren't involved the way some of the other players were. But, you know, I don't know if this group knows. So Kyle and I speak to the group from Hart every 3 weeks.
Yeah, by the way,
And
who's
at the
Kyle?
very-
I'm really out of the loop. Who's Kyle?
I'm sorry, Kyle Muncy is the board president, our board president. So he works on strategic
The
partnerships. And
UConn athletic communications guy.
he's not in athletics anymore, Paul. He's in purchasing. But yes, that's exactly who it is. Yeah,
Same guy.
he was in athletics for years.
I know him in that former life.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then at the very least, what I've recommended to Kyle and Sean is that we meet with Oak Tree every 3 weeks. I mean, they've met with the board in executive session. a couple of times over the last 6 or 7 months, but I think the relationship that we've developed on these sort of one-on-one meetings with Hart have been really valuable. And I feel there's more of a collaboration than there was, and I've got my fingers crossed. So,
All right, so that brings us up to date on what we're supposed to do. So we're not, at the moment, there's nothing for us to do regarding the strategic plan until.
not yet, but hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, hang on, there will be.
There will
Not
be.
tonight. For tonight, there's nothing else you need to do.
Okay. Just don't want to drop the ball on something we're supposed to pick up.
No, I think you're good.
Okay. Anything else as part of that report, Cynthia?
No, we're anxiously waiting for Brooklyn Dumplings to open. We're hoping mid-January. That's the kind of the main
How did
activity.
you get them,
Excuse me.
Cynthia? Do you know
Pardon?
how did they decide to come here?
So Matt Ruscani, who was the person that owned Moe's, Mooyah, why am I forget, Wings over in the end.
Mhm.
He was the original owner of all 3 of those, and he sold all 3 of them. So he was already kind of connected into downtown stores. So he must have approached, I assume, the Oak Tree, their leasing agent.
Which 3 did he sell off?
He sold all 3 of them eventually.
Are they owned by a single owner or by different franchisees?
Different franchisees. Well, Wings is not open now, so that's
Right.
bye-bye. But yeah, Mooyah and Moe's have separate owners.
So when, and maybe you're doing this already, is there any planting stories? I've been telling people that this thing is coming, but is that a use of someone like Margaret Chady just to get the word out, build a little excitement so people are curious about it?
Yeah, that's Kathleen.
Okay.
Would probably be, since it's downtown. So, we will, Shamim. I mean, I've told Matt we'll do a grand opening, we'll do all of this. I'm always hesitant to do too much until they're actually in there, to be perfectly.
You're singing from Big Daddy's Noodles.
Yes,
or
I
whatever
am.
it's called. Yes, yeah.
Been there, done that.
Does anybody know how Big Daddy's Noodles is doing?
I think it's really Daddy's. I've
Or
created a
Daddy's
whole
Noodles?
name.
Yeah,
Daddy's
yeah.
Noodles. Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing all right. When I've gone in there, there's people in there. So, yeah.
Food is
and I
good.
don't.
Food is
Food's
very
good?
good.
Yeah.
The food, yeah.
Yep.
I have a
Um,
question. Cynthia, you mentioned the fact that you meet with the property owners on a regular basis, at least every 3 weeks. Is the agenda that you discuss, the topics that you present, to all same? And then as far as the response goes, I mean, what is it? Can you share as far as, what that conversation is like, and, what the read is that you can get from, the input or the feedback?
Yeah, I mean, some of those conversations are confidential in terms of protecting their interests, and in terms of their negotiations. They don't, they sort of pick and choose what I think they tell us. So, so I hope people can understand that. That's kind of why we wanted to do this, because then Kyle it's not a board meeting. It's not he's on his own. Just let's try to talk this through, and gives us an idea of what's going on. And so whenever, we can, it's certainly something that can be, shared in a public manner. So it is a little more in the weeds, and talking to them about kind of where they're going. I think, as Kyle said, there's a lot of irons in the fire, but we're still kind of waiting. So, we're told that it's very they're getting a lot of interest, especially on the heart piece, but you know, nothing's definitive. I know they were supposed to meet with one group and they didn't show up. You know, then they're talking to, you know, so it's just, and I will say, maybe Kyle said this at the last board meeting, one meeting they're saying so-and-so is this, and then the next meeting it's like, well, no. So things
Right.
change constantly.
Yeah, it's
So-
fluid. I mean, I could understand.
It is fluid. It is, Mario, yeah.
All right, anything else on the strategic plan and downtown stores updates?
I guess the only thing I would say, Tony, is that Kathleen, Denise Kegler in our office, Kara Workman, Prabhas, Casey, and Emily Wicks and I had a meeting about events and Yukon events. So part of the strategic plan is trying to activate the square more. So we talked a lot about the process, working with student groups, trying to bring them into the square. And so it's kind of our next step that we're looking at is to hopefully start with kind of the student groups that we've worked with before and kind of do a pilot for this spring. And one of the things that we really talked about, again, I just came off this meeting at 3, is to have sort of consistency to it. So, you know, similar to the movies and the summer concerts on the square, that we would have, you know, Wednesdays, you know, as Kara said, wacky Wednesdays. I mean, that was just something they did, you know, some sort of alliteration or something to really grab people, that is something consistently that would happen throughout the spring. And then in the summer, we might transition to other groups that are not Yukon groups, when most of the student groups are away. So we're excited about that because that was clearly something we hear from the community, and definitely was in the strategic plan. We also talked a little bit about busking, and you know, we've had a little bit of that, and continuing to kind of see if we can promote that going forward.
Has anything come out of a game night?
We did talk about bringing our games back out on the square, which I think we did once, and I know Tony at that movie event. So that's something, you know, we own a couple of games, but bringing those out just like, you know, every Friday or every, you know, when the weather's good. So yeah, we have talked about that a little bit. Just so you know, Library Express used to do a game night before COVID.
Yeah.
In Library Express, and you know, I don't know that they got a ton of people. I think they got, you know, between 5 and 10, but you know, they haven't done any programming in there since COVID.
Okay, well, that's obviously an evolving area. Is there anything else? The next item on our agenda is a motion to adjourn, and I just want to make sure that we get everything taken care of before we get to that. Is there anything else? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Mario. Thank you. All right.
Carolyn.
Well, we'll
Bye.
see you all in a month and
Bye.
at the board. Okay.
Have a good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Right.